Welcome to a day and a half of presentations, particularly showcasing the work that has been carried out under the Clyde Urban Super Project with the handier acronym CUSP. CUSP is a project which has been running for nearly 5 years now, and I've been fortunate enough to be the leader of the project overall. And it's a complex multidisciplinary project which has brought together many of the areas of expertise and specialism that exist within the British Geological Survey. But also, excitingly, it has brought us in close contact with key strategic partners, most importantly Glasgow City Council, and a range of our partners in the universities, both in Scotland and elsewhere in the UK and further afield. So we'll be showcasing the CUSP work with a focus on Glasgow, the Clyde catchment, a whole systems approach through to the Clyde inner estuary. And we'll be looking at a whole range of aspects of the subsurface properties, the geochemistry, the groundwater, and the applications of this knowledge, most importantly of all, because there's no point in gathering all of this knowledge if it isn't put to good use. But we've also brought together, and a significant component of the audience comprises a group from various countries across Europe who are attempting to do similar things in relation to the urban subsurface in particular. So Glasgow will be a strong focus of what we look at over the next day and a half. And several of the talks, particularly tomorrow, will come from the group of European partners, showcasing some of the work in some of Europe's largest cities. But today the focus is on the early stage researchers' contribution to some of our activity. So we have this multidisciplinary effort, the Clyde Urban Super Project, and we'll be showcasing work particularly of British Geological Survey colleagues and some of the work that's been carried on in the universities as well. And we're fortunate in having invited a couple of colleagues from the MASTS group, the Marine and Applied Science and Technology Scotland group. So a couple of the presentations this afternoon will come from there. A thematic volume is going to result from this set of publications, and we are working with the Royal Society of Edinburgh in presenting that thematic set of volumes, and several of the presentations that you'll hear this afternoon from the early stage researchers who've been involved in this major effort will be presented as part of that suite of papers. The key research directions of the Clyde Urban Super Project have been essentially survey-driven in the initial stages, the acquisition of data which we have acquired ourselves over a number of years, but also data which has been acquired by the private sector. So an enormous amount of effort has been put into bringing these data together, but also acquiring new survey data, and that's especially been the case with regard to a lot of the geochemical survey work across the whole of the Clyde catchment and at higher resolution across the urban area as well. Then applying some of that data and knowledge, looking at aspects of the quaternary interpretation, buried valleys and so on, and you'll hear a talk by one of our colleagues in a couple of minutes on that. Look at some of the applications in regard to new interest in ground source heat, for example. The interpretation of the mine history of Glasgow as a whole, it's often been seen as a hazard and a problem, but maybe there are new dividends which present positive opportunities. Issues related to contamination. This is very much an area affected by its industrial past, its industrial legacy, and that's left an imprint over the urban area as a whole, and we'll have talks looking at that, but also where some of that urban contamination has actually been fed further afield into the Clyde inner estuary. Significant work related to groundwater and the need to establish a better baseline of data in relation to that. So an early stage groundwater monitoring network has been developed as part of this project, and it's hoped that that will be developed further and taken on by the regulatory authority SEPA in the long term. And further work related to the interpretation of the groundwater data, particularly in relation to numerical modelling. So we'll hear something of that as well over the next couple of days. But also looking at the whole range of anthropogenic processes, influences, and uses of the urban subsurface, such as sustainable drainage. So we gather together all of this research effort and we engage with a whole range of partners, particularly in the local authorities, the regulatory authorities, but a whole range of interested partners through a new knowledge exchange network, ASK, which we will tell you something about over the next day and a half. the real and practical use and reuse of data in urban areas is a critical area that we've made considerable progress in relation to. And engaging in areas of specialist expertise and research within the university community, a large number of projects have been undertaken, both at MSc and PhD level. And, as I've referred to, the engagement with a wider network of European partners. The Glasgow work has been quite influential in setting up this network, but it's by no means the only component of that network. So you'll hear more about this. Just a quick snapshot of some of the many projects which have been undertaken, and virtually all of these projects have been taken place in different universities. So quite a large number of university students have been involved and have been supervised, co-supervised by project staff within CUSP and within the universities. But on to the programme itself. And we're going to kick off with the first presentation will be by one of my BGS colleagues, Andrew Finlayson, Dr. Andrew Finlayson. In fact, he's such a new PhD, he didn't actually get into the programme for which I take personal responsibility, and I apologise for that, Andrew. Dr. Andrew Finlayson will be talking about some of the core work which he's contributed to the Clyde Urban Super Project, but which also formed the basis of his recently awarded PhD. So we'll be looking at Glasgow through the Ice Age.